Good morning. As you can see, clearly, I just woke up. And I apologize in advance if my voice is stupid sounding or if my eyes look a little bloodshot. I am not on drugs and I did not stay up all night drinking. But it is allergy season where I'm at, so I'm kind of a mess right now, as you could probably guess. But I figured what better time to make a video, right? So I wanted to talk about some game dev stuff today. And I was going back over some of my old notes and realized that that's something that not everybody thinks to do or realizes the value of. So I thought I might want to go over that with you folks and put some of my notes out there to give you an idea of how useful these things can be, or at least entertaining. So basically what I'm talking about is, over the course of my game dev career, I've pretty much, anytime I've had an interesting idea for a game mechanic or an entire game even, and I just didn't have, a project just like lined up for it, or, I hadn't thought, oh, I'm going to turn this into a game and started working on it, I pretty much write it down on a piece of paper or, sketch it out, and then I put it in a folio and I pretty much forget about it. And after a while, I've built up kind of this catalog of game mechanics and ideas. So that's my cat scratching at the door. So I've got this whole back catalog of little game mechanics, random ideas for game functions and gameplay themes, and different worlds, different game settings, all sorts of interesting stuff. And I find this is a really good practice in general, not just because I do it and I like to do it, but because it gives you an opportunity to look back at your own work and kind of see the evolution of it and your own thought processes. But also, there's something visceral about writing something on a piece of paper and then setting it aside and finding it later on. You find these aged pieces of paper with chicken scratch scrawled on them. And it almost is, because of that nostalgia, it kind of makes the idea more, I don't really know how to describe it, like prevalent, I guess. I mean, it kind of gives it more impact when you go back and you look at it, to where it almost brings back the excitement you had when you first wrote it down on paper, which is something I'm really big on, especially in like game development, where I had mentioned it before in one of my other videos that I haven't published yet, which is how it's always important to recapture that feeling that you had when you first had the idea and wrote it down or put it in a file or whatever, what have you, because that's ultimately what's going to drive you in it, is not just having a good idea on paper or on a file, but is having that drive, that feeling of, yeah, this is a cool idea, this is going to work out, or I like this. Space bugs. Alright. Yeah, like, as you can see, nothing terribly complicated, just a couple of lines of text and maybe a little bad drawing. I've got several of them, even if it's just blocks or cubes or something, just anything to kind of get the idea written down. Maybe something as interesting as a character sketch from time to time, or a pizza stain. Those are very important to development. I never even finished these, so there's 3 points in this list and the third one's blank. Then I've got a bunch of random notes too. Doing brainstorming for stuff. Excuse all the cat hair on it. Speaking of, there she is. Good morning, Boudica. Alright. See, a lot of these notes that I've taken down too aren't necessarily my own ideas that I had for games or game concepts. Like, for example, I've got at least two. Nope, get that one out of the way. At least 2 sheets of little notebook paper here that are just different traits and functions and features and gimmicks of other games that I find interesting, that I've just kind of classified and written down to have as a reference, just what I liked about those games. Like, I've got Final Fantasy Tactics on here in the first line, one of my favorite games, and it says, class system, and that's underlined, so I'm assuming that I put a big emphasis on the class system in that game. It's really what made it very interesting, to me, anyway. Emphasis on strategy versus just straight attacking. Because, you know, a lot of Final Fantasy games could turn into sort of a melee fest, as it were, as much as the strategy you could use with spells was interesting. Sometimes it would just turn into you just mashing the A button and one-hitting every enemy that comes along just to get slogged through all the random battles. Whereas Final Fantasy Tactics differed from that, where you can just kind of use attack, but it was more strategy. I've got Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VII, atmosphere, again underlined, multiple character types with unique abilities, especially in Final Fantasy VI. I found that was really, really well done, where every character, especially with their special moves, has their own unique flavor. But the atmosphere in Final Fantasy VI and VII is what really did it for me, and what I really like about those games. You know, the fact that you start off in this kind of steampunk tundra, if you will, in Final Fantasy VI, and then in Final Fantasy VII, you've just got this big hive city that were just full of character, really cool. But yeah, just little things about games that I like, because, you know, again, it's about mood and feeling, I find, for me more than anything. And having a reference like this, whether it's my own game ideas or successful game ideas, and even in the latter case, that can be even more important to try to get that feeling. Because the thing is it's important to be inspired by your favorite games, but not copy from your favorite games necessarily. I mean, sometimes a little copying is okay, you know. But yeah, I find just to, again, just get in the mood of things, having that inspiration there at hand, so you can think, what really is it about those games that I like a lot? Oh yeah, that was something I always liked about those games. So then you start thinking about it, you start thinking about your game, some ideas kind of mesh. Just generally speaking, I find that sort of thing helpful, and I figured I'd pass it along. And of course, I never get too terribly complex or deep with these things. It's always just a short blurb or a write-up. I'll say concept, write out the concept, extrapolate on it a little bit, maybe write a paragraph or two on the most important things, just stream of consciousness style as I'm thinking of the idea to get it down so that I remember it. I also find it's easier to pick back up on those ideas and just run with them and continue to come up with ideas and thoughts relative to them later on, when you have that sort of basis that was just very stream of consciousness and very automatic writing almost. Anyway, I'm going to go finish waking up because, as you can see, I'm not awake right now. But that's just some morning game dev thoughts. Let me know what you think. Let me know about your morning game dev routine. I mean, not everybody's a psycho like me and just rolls out of bed and immediately starts working, but sometimes that's what it takes. Heck, what am I talking about? Like, every time that's what it takes. Like, literally every time. Not to discourage you, but... Anyway, catch you next time.